Um, we apologize for this slight delay, but welcome to this virtual event on unlocking climate finance, which will provide a briefing for parliamentarians on this very important issue. My name is Alexandra Blagojevic, and I work with the IPU Secretariat in Geneva. I will be your moderator today. We are less than 2 months away from COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. As you may know, climate finance will be at the forefront of the discussions this year, and this COP is commonly being referred to as the Finance COP. Today's event will provide us with the opportunity to deepen our understanding of key climate finance concepts, as well as challenges and opportunities in the context of climate finance. It will also pay particular attention to the latest trends in international climate finance, which will be of great relevance to the negotiations at COP29. The insights that we gain today on climate finance will also set the stage for further discussions at the upcoming parliamentary meeting at COP29, being organized by the IPU and the Parliament of Azerbaijan. The dates are the 16th and 17th of November, and it will take place in the COP Green Zone. Official invitations have been dispatched to this event, and we greatly encourage you to join your IPU national delegation to attend this important meeting. Furthermore, in a couple of weeks' time at the 149th IPU Assembly, which will take place on the 13th and through the 13th from the 13th through the 17th of October in Geneva, there will be a number of events in which we will discuss different aspects of climate change, and I invite you to visit the IPU website to check the full assembly program. Now we will start with our webinar today. We have some housekeeping rules, which I am pretty sure most of you are aware of by now. You know Zoom. The most important ones are, first, there is interpretation in English, French, Spanish, and Arabic. We ask you to please keep your microphone muted when you're not speaking. Raise your electronic hand when you want to take the floor. And we would also appreciate it if you could rename yourself, starting with the name of the country and then your name, so that it is easier for us to recognize where you come from. We will start with an introduction to climate change, which will be done by 3 presenters. We have 2 experts and a member of parliament. After that, we will open the floor for an interactive debate. At the end, we will ask you to fill out a short evaluation survey. I would like now to introduce the first speaker in today's event. This is Mr. Yolando Velasco, who is a manager in the Climate Finance Subdivision within the Means of Implementation Division at the UNFCCC Secretariat, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Mr. Velasco will share with us some key information on the global finance landscape and highlight some climate finance challenges and opportunities which are of great relevance to parliamentarians. Mr. Velasco, please take the floor.
Thank you, Alexandra, and let me share my screen for my presentation. Are you able to see my screen now?
We are able to see your screen. Thank you.
Thank you. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening, as the case may be. And it's a pleasure to be invited to this session on climate finance. I'll just provide a brief, since I'm only given 10 minutes for this presentation, a brief overview of climate finance and also the climate finance issues that will be discussed in Baku, that, as you mentioned, Alexandra, being identified as a climate finance COP for reasons that I'm going to explain later. The Standing Committee on Finance, which is the advisory body of to the Convention and to the Paris Agreement on all climate finance matters, in 2014 identified the aims of climate finance, so which is basically on mitigation, adaptation, on resilience. That defines climate financing from the rest of the finance. And if you notice, it's focused on the aims. And of course, others would define climate finance in the context of the sources, be it from the public, private, and innovative sources of finance, differentiating it from other sources of regular sources of finance. Just to give you a quick overview of how we, at least in the context of the intergovernmental process, we looked into climate finance. So first, in the context of the mobilization of finance, currently there is this 100 billion goal, which was agreed by parties in 2010 at the COP in Cancun, to be delivered by the developed countries starting 2020 onwards. And it is based on focusing on delivering finance for developing countries to support mitigation and adaptation. This 100 billion has been extended to 2025, and thus the conference of the parties decided to launch what we call now the new collective quantified goal on climate finance that will replace the 100 billion after 2025. Since the new climate finance regime should be in place by 2025 so that there's no gap between the 100 billion and the future climate finance. Therefore, this year, COP29 in Baku is the year where parties will need to set in place that regime, meaning agree on and come up with a decision on new collective quantified goal on finance, which I'm going to outline later. So that's the mobilization on finance. The delivery aspect of it is also critical. There are two sets of delivery. One is what we call the funds under the convention or under the authority and guidance of the convention. That's the Green Climate Fund, the Global Environment Facility, and the newly established fund for responding to loss and damage. In addition to the funds under the convention, you would have other funds. You would have the Special Climate Change Funds, the Least Developed Countries Fund, and the Special Climate Change Fund. Under the Global Environment Facility, the Adaptation Fund under the Kyoto Protocol, and you would have the bilateral, regional, and multilateral institutions delivering on finance. The first set of institutions are, since they are directly under the guidance of the COP, including the Adaptation Fund, every year the COP provides guidance on how they are being implemented and the priorities of the conference of the parties. And then the final part of this architecture is the transparency of support, meaning the reporting on how the funds have been mobilized and delivered, what type of activities have been funded, which are the channels, the types of instruments, the loans, the grants, etc. So that's the transparency of support, where the conference of parties received regular communications from the parties on this one. And that basically forms the architecture to which the conference of the parties would deliberate every year on climate finance. Just to give you an overview of the latest report prepared by the Standing Committee on Finance, which still to be released. They've already agreed on this, and it's being edited and being cleaned up. As I mentioned to you earlier, that finance is not just about the aim, but also looking into the sources, the delivery, and who are the recipients to this. The green one, this is the global climate finance, which is at about 1.3 trillion. This is for the year 2021-2022. The SCF prepare report biennially. So the last one was 2020-2021, and this one covers 21-22, which basically doubles the climate finance, global climate finance from 2021 to 2020, 21 to 21-22. And the green one is mainly the public finance, and that's the one that that is being officially reported to the convention. On the right side, you would notice the degree of accuracy of this information, to which there is more confidence in the data on the green one, because these are officially communicated to the convention. The rest of the finance flows are from other sources, to which we don't have clarity in terms of methodology, in terms of being reviewed and being verified. In contrast to the flows in 2021-22, you would have the needs of the developing countries, and this will also be reported this year. The second needs determination report. And this one basically covers the 142 parties that reported on their needs, NDC needs, which stands at around 5 to about 6.8 trillion. The time frame though differs, because different developing countries have different time frames. Others would have 2015, others would have 2020, going to 2030 or even 2035. So time frame for these differ from those who report the information. So you would have the global flows, you have the needs of the developing countries. Now going straight into the climate finance in Baku. There are about 20 plus agenda items on climate finance. I'm not going to go through that. That represents about 30% of the decisions that will be adopted in Baku. And in addition to all these agenda items, the decisions that will be drafted and adopted in Baku, there are two high-level ministerial dialogues. So one on adaptation finance, and the other one is on the long-term finance. I just highlighted the yellow ones because they are the key climate finance priorities, or at least the key issues on finance in Baku. First, as I mentioned earlier, the new collective quantified goal on climate finance, followed by the loss and damage, the fund for responding to loss and damage, which is expected to be operationalized at this COP. With the legal arrangements being completed between the board and the fund, the recruitment of the executive director, and also the confirmation of the pledges made at the previous COP. The second one is on the Article 21C, which basically states that the rest of the finance flows, global finance flows, should be consistent with low emission and climate resilient development. And the understanding here is that this one covers the rest of the flows, particularly the private finance. And other issues, of course, the 100 billion, to which the Conference of the Parties continue to monitor its progress. And the report from OECD indicated that in 2022, $115 billion of public finance flowed from developed to developing countries, confirming that the 100 billion has been achieved in 2022. And of course, this will be subject to conversations, deliberations by parties. And then the report by the developed country parties on the doubling of the provision of adaptation finance, although this goal is for 2025, an annual conversation among parties is important in terms of understanding whether the developed country parties are on track in terms of delivering their commitments. Going now into the NCQG, I'm not going to go through the whole the history of the decisions, but it started in Paris, as I mentioned, to replace the 100 billion. And then in Glasgow, the decision 9 CMA3 established a 3-year work program to develop the technical issues and at the same time start looking into what are the political issues that need to be considered at this COP. And that was the decision made in Dubai, the decision 8 CMA5, to which the expert group that looked into and prepared for this is supposed to come up with a framework for a draft negotiating text. That draft negotiating text is expected to be delivered no later than October 14, so that then parties would have the time to prepare for the negotiations at COP29. So the NCQG is critical, as I mentioned, because this basically sets the future of climate finance in terms of the scale of financing, the ambition, the sources of finance, the delivery mechanism, who will contribute to this, to the future finance, access modalities among developing countries, vulnerable countries, the types of instruments, whether loans, grants, and other instruments, its governance structure, the transparency in terms of reporting, the verification of information, and the review of the overall delivery of finance goal. Currently, the expert the parties and experts that were involved in the 3-year process basically looked into preamble, context, and then you would have the quantitative elements, thematic scope, qualitative elements, and the transparency. These are the broad elements that are expected in the decision in Baku. And finally, in terms of the key political issues, you would have obviously the quantum, the number that parties will need to agree, and whether it's based on what would be the basis of that, the needs, priorities of the developing countries, the distinction between the different sources, public finance and other sources, and whether there will be sub-goals, meaning mitigation, adaptation, and other sub-goals within those thematic areas. Who, as I mentioned earlier, the contributors to this fund currently, of course, it's the debate is in the context of the commitments under the convention, the obligations, and also the role of the broader set of parties and countries who may be in a position to contribute. And then you would have the issue of the loss and damage, and whether the loss and damage can be added as one of the thematic areas in addition to adaptation and mitigation that will definitely scale up the resources needed for the long-term finance goal. And finally, the issue of developing countries, particularly the least developed countries and the small island development states on the debt sustainability. and how the impact of climate would add burden to debts that they are already undertaking right now. So that's basically a quick overview of climate finance and the issues expected at COP29. Over to you, Alexandra.
Thank you so much. This was a very interesting and very comprehensive. I'm sure that members of parliament will have a lot of questions for you about what they can do, what is their role. But for now, it is my pleasure to invite our next panelist, Mr. Moyenda Chaponda, who is a Development Partnerships Officer at the World Meteorological Organization. Mr. Chaponda will discuss efforts to support countries' access to climate finance, as well as present some of WMO's climate mechanisms. Mr. Chaponda, please go ahead.
Thank you, Alexandra. Can you see my slide?
We don't see it yet. Yes, we can see it now.
Perfect. So thank you, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone joining. It's a pleasure to be invited by the IPU. My name is Moyenda Chaponda, Development Partnerships Officer at the WMO headquarters in Geneva. And I think it's a good segue from the previous presentation, kind of looking at the global view. My presentation will focus on what's being done at the regional and the country level, and the specific support that we provide our member countries in terms of accessing climate finance. So WMO is a specialized agency of the UN. We have 193 member states and territories, and we oversee and lead the global efforts to provide high-quality weather, climate, and hydrological services, promoting data sharing, setting standards and technical regulations, monitoring climate change indicators, and supporting research for resilience and sustainable development. We are represented by our national meteorological and hydrological services in our member state countries. And most of the work that we are doing to support them is through the lens of adaptation finance. So the presentation here will focus on that. In terms of the mechanisms that we have to provide support to our members, this is really done through 3 different work streams. Direct implementation of projects funded through our extra budgetary contributions at national and regional level. This is coming mainly from, part of it comes from climate finance, others comes from bilateral donors. We also support our members through our flagship initiatives. These are early warnings for all, which was the UN Secretary General's call that every person on Earth is covered by an early warning system. And so efforts are made as well to support members through these very important initiatives. We also have the Global Greenhouse Gas Watch, and supporting the Global Basic Observation Network. I'll provide some information a little bit later on that. In addition to that, we also provide technical expertise and support to development partners to deliver appropriate needs-based investments. And in addition to that, we assist our members to directly mobilize resources. So just to have a bit of a perspective on some of the work, I've provided a slide that kind of provide key information on our ongoing initiatives, the type of support that is provided in terms of access to regional and global models, early warning systems improvement, hydrological observation network enhancement, just to name a few. And as you can see on the right-hand side, important for this discussion is an overview of our major donors. And as you can see there, we have some of our climate funds, and at the same time, some of our bilateral donors. In terms of the climate funds, which are critical to supporting our members, as you can see, in terms of the trend over the last 10 years, it has steadily increased in WMO in terms of how we're able to access different climate funds. And this steady growth represents that importance to our members and how we are actively pursuing the engagement with the Adaptation Fund, the GCF, and other climate fund mechanisms. And there's that steady growth, as you can see. Only dip was during COVID-19, but we are now steadily accessing additional financing and looking at different opportunities in that. So just to provide an overview of the climate fund mechanisms that we are tapping into, there's the Climate Risks and Early Warning Systems Initiative. So these are the funds that are mainly supporting. There's the System Observing Financing Facility, SOF, the Adaptation Fund, which was mentioned before. And then we also have support just recently received from the from the African Development Bank through their climate action window, where we were able to receive a $10 million approval for funds to support some of our countries and some of the countries in Africa. So different mechanisms, mostly supporting least developed countries and small island developing states. With the Adaptation Fund, we are an accredited entity, and so we work a lot on putting proposals together with our members and then applying for the funds of up to 14 million through the Adaptation Fund. So that is one opportunity that we have. We currently have 3 projects with the Adaptation Fund and about 6 or 7 in the pipeline. And they could actually be, the Adaptation Fund in the next 2 to 3 years could actually be WMO's biggest donor for our development projects. But for the sake of this presentation, I'm actually going to focus on cruise and SOF, the 2 on the left, and provide a little bit more information on the 2 of them and in terms of the different funding modalities. So the cruise initiative is a financial mechanism which funds LDCs and SIDS to establish risk-informed early warning services. There's currently 18 country and regional projects, and these are being implemented through the 3 partners, the WMO, the World Bank, and the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR. There's 3 financing windows to meet country needs: multi-year projects, the accelerated support window, and then partnership with the GCF through the cruise scaling up framework. So since 2017, we've managed to, with cruise support, they've managed to support 396 million people in 45 countries, have gained access to forecast and early warning services. And then just to provide a little bit more information on the 3 financing modalities under cruise, you have first national and regional multi-year projects. The national projects are usually in the range of 3 to 5 million and last 3 to 5 years for implementation. The regional projects are 5 to 7 million for 5 to 7 years, and the eligibility to access those funding are mainly LDCs and SIDS. And this is submission by the implementing partner. And WMO, we do this on behalf of the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services. The accelerated support window is more targeted support. It's up to 250,000 for very specific activities such as an assessment or analysis of observation network. Usually it runs for about 12 months. And this is a direct submission from the country. So with the support of one of the implementing partners, WMO, World Bank, or UNDRR. And then there's the partnership with GCF with the simplified approval process. This is a more new funding window where you have access to up to 25 million US dollars per project. And this is actually building on successful, ongoing, or recently completed cruise projects. So they've tried to bridge the work that has been done from the national and regional multi-year projects, and then have that opportunity to access additional financing from the GCF up to 25 million following their procedures, but an opportunity to bridge the 2 funding mechanisms. So this provides a bit of an overview globally of the work cruise has done and how they've been able to support different member countries. 9 regional projects are ongoing. There's 9 multi-year country projects, 81 countries currently supported, as you can see, in the Caribbean, West Africa, Central Africa, Southwest Indian Ocean. There's a project in Horn of Africa, another cruise project in East Africa. And in this, WMO, UNDR, and the World Bank all participate or through implementation. UNDR working mostly with the National Disaster Management Offices, WMO with the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services, and then with the World Bank also providing that additional support in terms of the different ministries and some of the infrastructure investments that are ongoing in the countries. The scaling up framework, there's currently 2 in the pipeline. We have Togo and in the Caribbean. So those are hopefully will be approved by the Cruise Steering Committee next year. So there's quite a bit of work that has been done since 2016. And in terms of the funding accessed through this climate fund, it's about $83 million in terms of funding decisions to support these. So that's the cruise initiative. Mindful of my time, I think I've got about 5 more minutes. I'll try and get through the System Observing Financing Facility, SOF. So SOF is another specialized UN climate fund, which contributes to strengthening climate adaptation and resilient development. This is done through providing long-term grant financing and technical assistance for sustained collection and international exchange of surface-based weather and climate observations according to the Global Basic Observing Network. Quite a mouthful there, mostly WMO language, but what we're trying to do, or what is trying to be achieved through SOF, is to close the data and observation gap across the globe. And I think the next slide provides a better view of where the gaps are in terms of surface stations and upper area stations. And with that ability to fill in the gaps, this increases the weather forecasting accuracy across the globe. And so what SOF has been is it's a very targeted fund really to provide equipment and infrastructure in terms of these surface stations and upper area stations. SOF has 3 phases of support in terms of funding. There's funding for peer advisory services in the readiness phase, where countries conduct an analysis and an assessment. They prepare a plan that is provided to the SOF Secretariat, is done together with one of the more advanced meteorological services. And so it's a peer-to-peer support network. And then once they've completed the readiness phase, they then move on to the investment phase, where the infrastructure is put in place in terms of G-bond stations and capacity building is provided. So the plan is put in place, and then the investments are being made during the second phase. And then in the compliance phase, this is where SOF has a unique value proposition in terms of annual results-based payments for a G-bond verified data sharing. So in terms of countries' abilities to continuously provide data, international exchange of climate and weather observation data. And then SOF is able to provide support in terms of operations and maintenance of stations, which is one of the biggest challenges that the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services face. And so again, another slide just to give an overview of SOF support to date. As you can see, there are 6 countries that are programmed to receive the readiness support. So the very first phase, 47 current countries are receiving the readiness phase. So they've completed most of the steps there and are now in that next phase of moving to the investment phase, where they're working with their peer advisor, can then put into place the implementation of the stations and then the capacity building as well. So quite a lot of work. This is really targeted the upper stream of the work that WMO is doing, ensuring that we have the infrastructure in place, the observations equipment is in place, so that the climate services and information, they can then reach the last mile and the community. So SOF is one of those other ones, but something that has come up lately is trying to understand from our National Meteorological and Hydrological Services, how can we support them in terms of mobilizing climate finance at the national level? So currently, the climate finance mechanisms we have our WMO, the Secretariat, engaging with our members to prepare these proposals, project preparation, and then the implementation. But what we also are trying to promote is more active engagement of the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services directly engaged in accessing climate finance at the national level. And we came across this this architecture of climate finance. I know it's changed. I think Mr. Velasco previously mentioned how it's an ever-evolving landscape. But for our National Meteorological and Hydrological Services, it's quite a complex and very dense space. And so what we're trying to do is find that opportunity of how we can position them in the space so that they're able to access or play a more central role in being able to access climate finance, as the meteorological services have the climate data and meteorological data that's important to make that climate rationale argument of why the investment is needed. So we're trying to position them. And so we've developed a guidance note on enhancing the role of the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services in mobilizing climate finance at the national level, with 4 objectives: providing an overview of climate finance, the actors, the processes, and the initiatives that are typically undertaken at the national level, to highlight the climate finance decision-making principles and the role that the meteorological services can play as key drivers in the climate finance mobilization process, to highlight opportunities for them to work with funding agencies and national stakeholders to propose investments, and to be integral in terms of being part of the national policy and decision-making processes. And also having the opportunity to work with the national designated authorities of the different climate funds like GCF and Adaptation Fund. And then lastly, to also show how the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services can be empowered through international efforts that focus on vision setting, strategy, and then also importantly, agency perception in order to mobilize resources for national climate action. And so that's really key there as trying to enhance their role within the national space so that they're able to then position themselves a lot more effectively. So this is just my quick presentation here. I know quite a bit and quite a lot of information, but what I try to do is take this from the global level down to the country, regional and country level in terms of how we are supporting our members. Obviously, a lot has been achieved, but obviously the next COP meeting would be very important. In addition, this guidance note, we're also hoping to launch this at COP29 as an important milestone in how we are supporting our members. I think that's it for me, Alexandra. Thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions once the session is over. Thank you.
And thank you very much for your very interesting remarks. Before we move to the interactive discussion, I would now like to give the floor to Mr. Waven William, who is a member of the National Assembly of Seychelles, as well as the president of the IPU Standing Committee on Sustainable Development. I would like to ask him to share some insights with us on climate finance from his personal point of view, and also from a developing country perspective, and in particular, coming from Seychelles, a small island developing state. Mr. William, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandria. Do you hear me? Can you hear me?
We hear you. We hear you.
Thank you. I had a problem with connectivity, but I'm glad I can now be on air. I would like to. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Well, from the perspective of Seychelles, I mean, we just recently had a workshop with regards to our climate finance resource mobilization strategy, which will span from 2025 to 2030. So we are just putting things together. A meeting has been had with all the stakeholders in the country so that we can align our efforts with global trends. And I would like to add that Seychelles' broader international commitment includes the Sustainable Development Goals, nationally determined contributions, and the Resilience Sustainability Facility under the country's economic reform program under IMF. So we are linking all those efforts and actions together so as to get all the resources, financial resources together, so that we can deal with the adaptation and mitigation plans that we have nationally. But I will say that much effort has to come from national governments, because when we look at the way trends are going in terms of accessing foreign financing in regards to climate change, we have to make our own homegrown financial architecture projects so as to show that we are also contributing towards solving our own problems, because we know that globally everyone is being affected, all countries are being affected, and we know the challenges that countries, developed countries, are facing with regards to, providing funding to developing countries. So I believe that this forum is a good one in terms of giving information as to what can be done in the long run, in the way forward. I will not say too much, Alexandria, because I came in late, so I will see whether I can participate in questions at a later stage. So I thank you.
Thank you very much for your very interesting remarks, and also for sharing what you do in Seychelles. We would now like to open the floor and ask other members of parliament if they have questions for our experts, or for Mr. William, for that matter. He has been involved in climate change issues as a parliamentarian for many, many years and has a wealth of experience in that role. Please do not hesitate to raise your electronic hand, and I will give you the floor. So it's my pleasure to give the floor to Greg McLean from Canada, please.
Well, thank you. I don't know if, there we go. I hope you can hear me. Thanks for the presentation. I'm a member of Parliament from Canada. I'm in the opposition party, so we're not in the government party right now. We hope to be after the next election in a year. But we have been through the ringer here in this country about what climate finance actually means. And I was hoping in this meeting to actually go through what we mean by climate finance. I worked in finance for 23 years before getting elected in 2019, hoping to bring some financial sanity to this discussion about how we actually help the environment. But what we see in Canada, and just, I saw the presentations here today, and one thing that I always worry about is confusing outcomes with activity. So there's lots of activity going on here, but the outcomes we're seeing for the environment around the world continue to deteriorate. And part of the reason for that is because we're not looking at the full scope of what we're actually including in what we're doing. If developing countries around the world continue to use high carbon energy sources, and developed countries continue to reduce theirs, it is just a transfer of CO2 emissions for the world. So we need to make sure that what we're accomplishing here in spending the public's money has some accountability and some results at the end of the day. I think we have to rethink this. We're also looking at, we have good illustrations here in Canada because we have some of the players, some of the international players here include people like Mark Carney. And Mark Carney is well-known individual, previous governor of the Bank of Canada, previous governor of the Bank of England, and now allied with several multi-billion dollar organizations around the world. And the measurements they're trying to come up with here as far as what we're accomplishing in finance have nothing to do with CO2 reduction. They're just, again, shifting the emissions profile. And vast organizations are profiting from this. So as public servants, like I am and like most of you are, we have to make sure that we're holding these people to account on what they're actually accomplishing and in the programs they're accessing through the United Nations and through other multilateral organizations, that they're not just putting funds, public funds, into the pockets of people that already are making billions of dollars around the world. We do need expertise. Let's make no mistake, we need expertise from all kinds of scientific parties. We need expertise from all kinds of financial people. But the financial mechanisms I've seen being put forward through these mechanisms are not transparent financial mechanisms, and they will not lead to a solution. They, in my opinion, they will lead to a thumb on the scale as far as the decisions that are being made without outcome-based analysis of how we're helping the environment around the world. I've said enough. Kami is a contrarian as far as where we go. I think we need to restructure and get some more simplicity around where the math on finance and the math on climate equate at the end of the day. A bunch of mechanisms that cloud that outcome are not serving the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very interesting observation and questions. I would like to ask our experts to take note of this question, because I would like to invite them later to try and respond. Before that, we will go to Mr. Sultan Mamadov from Azerbaijan, please.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you very much. I would like to welcome everyone to this discussion, and at the same time, I would like just to underline what was mentioned by Alexandra, that this year Azerbaijan is honored, city of Baku is honored to host COP29. And I would like, it's not a question, I just would like to use this chance to invite all my colleagues to participate in the parliamentary meeting to be held on 16th and 17th of November in Baku, where we will discuss outcome document from the COP29, the role of the Parliament on the climate change national strategies and new financing mechanisms and many other issues. So now my role is as a rapporteur, being honored to have this role, to be in contact with all my colleagues, with all members of parliaments from the different countries in the world, and to motivate you to be active in the discussions around the document, which you have all received from the IPU, and also to invite you to Baku to be active and to support us with your all inputs and contributions. So thank you, Alexandra. I would like just to use this chance and to invite all my colleagues. That's all from my side. Thank you very much. And I'm very grateful to the presenters and for the very valuable, important presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your engagement. We are going back to Mr. Waven William.
Thank you, Alexandria. I would like to ask a question, but because I came in late, I don't recall the names of the presenters, but anyone who would like to answer can do so. My questions are, number one, I mean, do they think that small island states, in terms of having accountability, in terms of attracting foreign climate finance, should venture into having a climate change law in place, so as to present ourselves as accountable and to being transparent in terms of the contents of it? And secondly, I would like to have your thoughts with regards to carbon market policy in terms of carbon credits. I mean, coming from a small island state, I mean, we are not polluting that much. So if tomorrow we decide to sell out carbon credits, going to carbon markets, I don't feel that we are solving the global problem, but I feel that we are enhancing the emission of carbon, greenhouse gas into the air. Because when you look at new innovative way of attracting financing, I feel that going into selling of carbon credits to developed countries or companies is not solving our problem. In fact, it is, I mean, making it very difficult for all of us. I would like to have your opinion on this. I thank you.
Thank you very much for these questions. I see no other hands, and I would like to ask our experts if they would like to take these questions about accountability, about the climate law and carbon credits. Mr. Velasco, would you like to go first?
Thanks, Alexandra, and thanks to Greg and Waven for those questions. And Greg is indeed correct with regards to the need for transparency of climate finance, and in particular, the outcomes, the impact of finance being provided to support climate action. There is no universal definition of what climate finance is. Different institutions, financial institutions, use their own definition of what they consider as climate finance. You would have the multilaterals, the bilateral institutions, the funding agencies that define the scope of activities of what they can fund and consider as climate. Going into more specific, it's easier to define mitigation actions like renewable energy, energy efficiency directly as climate. The challenge is the moment you get into adaptation and other types of activities where it's mixed between climate development and other activities, sectoral activities. And the question here is to what extent the objective of that activity is geared towards climate or towards more development. And this is where the OECD tagging is being used on in terms of the objective. Is it 90% on climate, 80%, etc., etc. But indeed, it is important to have clarity on this and not just defining it for the purpose of defining it, but to understand the impact of the resources being put into specific actions. And as a matter of fact, there is an opportunity now in the context of the Paris Agreement where all parties, both developed and developing countries, are supposed to provide information on, in the case of the developing countries, the needs on climate, and also what they considered as financing for climate that they have received. On the side of the developed countries, they will also be reporting on finance that they have mobilized and provided to the developing countries. So there will be an opportunity to provide clarity on the set of activities that both developed and developing countries consider as climate finance, including the impacts of those activities. On Waven's question with regards to climate finance law, attracting foreign investments on climate, indeed, and this is not just for the SIDS, but for all countries, the enabling activities or enabling policies are needed to incentivize the mobilization of finance, particularly from the private sector. We know that more than 100 developing countries have now renewable energy law that basically provides the framework for investments, both domestic and international, into their countries on renewable energy and energy efficiency. So these are enabling policies that indeed would incentivize. Just a point on the carbon credits and the low emissions. Of course, we know even from the clean development mechanism under the Kyoto Protocol that the small island development states are the least users of this mechanism, given that they don't emit that much. Although there is a provision under the clean development mechanism now in the context of the carbon markets under the Paris Agreement, where the share of proceeds generated by the carbon markets will be contributed into the adaptation fund. So you would have mitigation actions being taxed, so that then it feeds into the adaptation fund, to which most of the small island development states need badly, more than any mitigation action. So you would have the transfer of resources from mitigation to adaptation to support the small island development states. Over to you, Alexandra. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask our other experts, especially Mr. Chaponda, if he would like to maybe take some of these questions.
Thank you, Alexandra, and thank you very much for those questions. I think I will maybe just focus one, which was on on accountability. I mean, I think as it relates to the work that WMO focuses on, we really look at the issue of adaptation finance in terms of helping communities and countries build resilience and strengthen their systems to be able to adapt to the impacts of climate change. And important in terms of the mechanisms that the different climate fund mechanisms, the results management frameworks, where there's a lot of time and effort that is put into setting out the goals, the impacts, the indicators of which this can then be verified in terms of, is this actually leading to that? A lot of time is spent. We've had workshops here with the Cruise Initiative, ensuring that and it's a participatory action in terms of having beneficiary countries, having the donors, the funders, the implementers all sit together to ensure researchers and scientists sit together to ensure that it is a collective action in terms of setting the baseline, the indicators, understanding if the interventions that are being made are leading to that. And I think another part is also the climate rationale, the science behind it, and ensuring that the data that is provided, at least for the work we do in National Meteorological and Hydrological Services, is a foundational element of these projects and interventions that are being made. And so that also can then demonstrate that the interventions that are being made have that long-lasting impact in the years to come. And so, yes, I think a lot more work needs to be done in that, but I think steps are the right steps are being made in terms of ensuring the results are being made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Fiji, from Mr. Inias Seruiratu, followed by, again, Canada, Mr. Greg McLean, please, in that order.
Thank you, Alexandra, for convening this very important meeting. I'm not in Fiji, I'm in New York for the UNGA as part of the Fiji delegation, and I'm following very closely the AOC's meetings, and particularly the small island developing states. And I'm thankful that my brother from Seychelles has also asked some concerning seeds, especially after seeds 4 meeting in Antigua and Barbuda, and of course the document that has been adopted, referred to as a bus. And I just have a question, and maybe if I can ask Lando from UNFCCC, if he can. One of the problems that we face is lack of capacities as well. We know that we want to access the funds, and apart from the bureaucratic process, the difficulty in accessing funds, we would like to, my question is on what technical expertise can be provided to small island developing states to help them in making their submissions, whether it's in the area of adaptation or whether it's in mitigation. And of course, we are thankful that loss and damage has come into the table as well after so many years of negotiation. So are there any specific assistances that can be provided to small island developing states in terms of the lack of capacity, so that they can come up with the proposals? And additionally, what would be expected for us from us in terms of the clear demarcation of these submissions, particularly on adaptation, on mitigation as well, as we come for COP29 in Baku. Thank you, Alexander.
Thank you very much. We are going back to Canada first. If we can wait, Wando, and then take additional questions if there are any. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And further to what I said earlier, every organization, whether it's a multilateral organization or a government or a company, has the decision to allocate scarce resources for the best outcomes. And that's what my job is. And that's what I think everybody in this organization, their job is, identifying what those best outcomes are that we can arrive at as efficiently and sustainably as possible. But take a step back and look at the accountability mechanisms that the people that are providing you money have. So I'm an elected official. I've got an accountability mechanism to the people that elected us. And those people are being taxed more now. You take a look at the countries that are providing the funding for your organization. They're all spending money. Their debt to GDP is skyrocketing. The amount of debt in Canada has doubled over the last 9 years. We're looking at committing $6 billion towards climate finance. We don't know what the outcomes for that will be. And yet we're going back and we're telling people that the economy here is actually shrinking on a per capita basis in Canada. A shrinking economy, so less available for our constituents, higher taxes, and the cost of sustaining the debt is up to $6,000 per person in Canada. So if we're paying $6,000 per person and an average of a $60,000 pre-tax average income, we are spinning our wheels, and this is actually escalating as far as the money that's going off the table to fund the escalating government debt. So the accountability mechanisms we need to ascertain here is, where should we be giving money that's going to accomplish something sustainable at the same time as we're making sure that we're not ramping up the costs of debt around the world, because it's not just Canada, it's every developed country around the world that's contributing to this. We are all going down the rabbit hole of debt here, and that debt has a huge cost to it, and will have an escalating cost as that debt gets on a runaway. So there's your balance that we have to be accountable for, and show me some outcomes that will not prejudice the ability for us to raise funds for good projects going forward by spending too much on projects that the outcome is not clear to the people to whom we're accountable. Thank you.
And thank you very much. We are now going to Esther Jolobala from Malawi.
Thank you so much for this capacity building. I have learned a lot. I'm a member of Parliament, and this is my second time in Parliament. I'm from the opposition. I have never attended any COP, but I do understand that as a member of Parliament, I'm responsible for the oversight, which my country in issues of oversight for whatever the country is getting, as well as whether it is in a form of loan or in a form of grant or whatsoever. So I would want to extend the question from the honorable member from Fiji, who has asked the question to do with the difficulties in other countries, difficulties in accessing these fund. I would want also to extend to say that these issues, they need technical people in our respective countries. So the time these people are engaging the development partners, members of parliament, we are not part and parcel. I don't know how other countries are doing, but members of parliament, they are not part and parcel of when the agreement is being done. But we are responsible for the oversight in making sure whatsoever the country has received or whatsoever the country has get in a form of loan, they are able to use it accordingly by way of supporting the communities with the issues of climate and so and other things. So my understanding and my expectation when I was registering for this, I was expecting that the presentation should go further to say for the 100 billion, the countries have performed this way. So we should know, I should be able to point out the shortfalls of my country, and I should be able to apply or see what kind of oversight can I provide. But just giving us the information without going further. Even I have seen Malawi on the SOF project. I have seen my countries there. But if you ask me how this SOF has gone or has supported people in Malawi and what report are you having, you should be able to share what report you are having. I should be able to see on the actual situation on the ground and see how best can I use my oversight role to support the executive in trying to implement or even in trying to access these funds. So with lack of information on that, I feel that there is a gap. I don't know in other countries how the oversight are being done, but for the Malawi perception, we have been mostly focusing on the resources we allocate in Parliament, in making sure that we are able to follow up. We are able also to oversee these grant and the loans at ministry level. But I think if you compare the way we do our oversight with the allocations we do at Parliament and the oversight we do with these grant and loan, it's very, very difficult because we do not have more information that will assist us to do our oversight better. So I was expecting that the presentation will go further and also we'll be able to learn how other countries are managing, best practices, and see whether we can apply the same things in our country, that if a country B is able to do this and they're able to get grants or loans and this, why not our country? Where are we not doing, where are we not doing well as members of Parliament? So the difficulties in accessing the funds is one of the areas, but also difficulties in providing oversight on these programs. I see that is one of the things that is even contributing to the failure of countries to be successful with these programs. I think I should stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And we are actually coming to the end of our webinar. We will allow for one more question from Mr. Waven William, then we will go back to our experts. Mr. William, please.
Thank you, Alexandria. I would like to ask the experts with regards to the climate financing, their opinion with regards to, Seychelles has been classified as a high middle income country. And we have been, we have been very advocative with regards to also to factor in the MVI, which has been accepted by the United Nations. But now with regards to new financing, new climate financing, how will this fare us in terms of getting equal share as the others, in terms of not looking at us as high middle income country, because we are being affected in regards to getting concessional loans and other support because we are classified as a high middle income country. So what would be your advice to us? And also, COP29 is finance COP. So what advice would you give us as members of parliament to watch out or to pay attention to when we go to COP29? I thank you.
Thank you so much. Landa, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I'll probably start with Waven on COP29. Of course, there will be almost 100 agenda items. Just on finance alone, 20 of that would be on under finance. There are critical issues that need to be looked at in the context of finance. The new collective quantified goal would be the highlight on finance. And of course, depending on the issues that you're looking at, for example, access, the scale of resources, the type of instruments, whether loans or instruments, all these issues are being tackled across those 20 agenda items on finance, and it's important that at the country level, it's important to have clear positions on those. And of course, in addition to finance, you would have mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage that are also linked to finance, but individually they also have their own agenda items, focusing on on clear outcomes and expectations on those different agenda items. On access, the question about the status of the country, when projects are being sent to different financial institutions, especially in the context of climate, it is being looked at the activity level. So the concessionality of a particular project would depend on the type of activity. Of course, activities that doesn't attract private investments, mostly, for example, adaptation finance or community-based type of activities are deemed to be more as grant rather than loan. And of course, types of activities that generate resources would be deemed more as in the context of concessional loan. So again, depending on the type of activities, not so much more on the status of the country. And of course, the economic condition of the country is one of those also being considered. The question of Esther with regards to difficulties in accessing funds. Indeed, the convention and the parties have recognized that, especially for LDCs and seeds over the years, and financial institutions are undergoing reforms, starting, for example, with the GCF, with the GEF, to ensure that access are being provided to developing countries, in particular, direct access to countries, and not going through layers and layers of institutions. The oversight, of course, there are different best practices, as you mentioned. Some countries have actually started undergoing this climate budget tagging, which is, of course, under the parliament, where they review the budget of the different different ministries, departments on an annual basis, on how much they spent on finance, and what bilateral, multilateral, those different public ministries are getting and are mobilizing. So that might be one way of looking at climate finance holistically, not just from domestic budget, but also from different sources. And there are good experiences from a few of Asian countries on this, and even from African countries also. On Greg's point about the resource allocation, the accountability mechanism, indeed, it is very important, and even there is a very strong, strict accountability mechanism for the financial institutions, ensuring that whatever they invest, be it mitigation, adaptation, that they get a return of those, or at least an impact of those investments. So accountability both at the project level and also at the convention level. That's why we have the regular, we have the first global stock take, and we will have another global stock take at 2028, looking at the impacts, for example, of the finance mobilization with regards to achieving, for example, the 1.5-degree goal, including the mitigation and adaptation goals that parties have agreed. On Inia's question with regards to the capacity and in terms of accessing funds, most of the financial institutions, and in particular, you have the GCF that has allocated readiness projects, readiness funds, and these are aimed at building the capacity of countries to be able to access GCF and other sources of finance. In addition to the readiness projects, these financial institutions also have the project development facility that is being used to assist countries in developing good project proposals, because that's always the problem with accessing finance, coming up with bankable types of projects. On Wavin's, I think those are the points that at least based on the questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Chaponda, would you like to make any additional comments, complement the information that we just heard in response to the questions?
Yes, thank you, Alexandra. Very quickly, I think just to respond to Esther in terms of the availability of information in terms of the projects, I think she mentioned she saw Malawi is being supported by SOF and Cruise, and it would be good to get that information and go a little bit further. That information is available. We do try when implementing these projects to have that information available, but definitely something that a process that can be improved in terms of how that information is shared internally in a specific country or the countries there, so that there is awareness that these sorts of projects are ongoing. And then in terms of, I can quickly speak on the middle income country status. It's something that has been raised because there's a lot of focus on LDCs and SIDS, and discussions on how to look at lower and higher middle income countries, and can support also be provided there. Discussions are ongoing, but I think the discussions on COP are important for those sorts of discussions on making funding more available. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are sorry that we are not able to take more questions. I think we can all agree that the discussions today have been incredibly rich and certainly thought-provoking. We definitely see the scope to continue promoting these exchanges with experts and within the parliamentary community as well. I think all participants will leave this event with some new insights to inform their actions, particularly as we prepare for COP29. On behalf of the IPU, I would like to thank our excellent experts, Mr. Velasco, Mr. Chaponda. I would also like to express our gratitude to all of you for your participation, to the interpreters as well. We look forward to continuing this important conversation on climate finance and climate action, both in Geneva and Baku in the upcoming months. Before disconnecting, may I ask you please to fill out our evaluation form. This will help us hear your thoughts and do better next time. So please, if you would just take a minute to fill this out. And while you are doing this, I would like to bring to your attention that the IPU is organizing a virtual regional dialogue for African parliaments on combating land degradation, desertification, and drought. So this dialogue is going to take place on Zoom. Again, it's next Wednesday on the 2nd of October in the afternoon. The webinar will discuss the main outcomes of the recent African Ministerial Conference on the environment and provide a platform for parliaments in the region to share national experiences on tackling these environmental issues. So we greatly encourage parliamentarians from African countries who are in this meeting to also participate in the next week's meeting. Registration and additional information can be found on the IPU website. So thank you so much. And thank you for also filling out the poll. I would like to close the webinar now. I wish you a great day, a good evening. Thank you again, and bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.